his clients to dance during labor. He does
Oh,
he does
really?
these dances that are like opening up the hips and
Yep.
like it's kind of like hip hop, and but that you can see it's so funny.
Sorry, I'm picturing this. This is great. I have to.
No, I know. And he's doing like some squats, and he'll do it with them. And it's just hilarious, but wonderful at the same time, because the women are smiling and laughing and not fearful. And
Mhm.
I just wondered what Ida Mae would think about this OB who's dancing with these ladies.
I did try to dance my son out. It didn't
Did
work.
you?
Or at least into position. Like with my
Yeah.
daughter in my 9th month, I was like, Ava, let's dance. And I would just dance for like a half an hour. And my babies thoroughly enjoy being inside me, apparently. The idea of coming out is horrible to them.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It's okay. But
Well, was this the first time that you had discovered Ina May Gaskin? Had anybody heard of her before? Have you read any of her books or anything?
No.
Her name sounds familiar, but I did thoroughly enjoy the TED Talk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're interested in learning more, and I'll post some links, but we went and saw this great movie she made called Birth Matters. And she talked a little bit more about how your body's not a lemon. I thought it was interesting that that was a theme that ran through Birth Matters, her movie. And I read Spiritual Midwifery, which was, it's really funny. They wrote it in the 70s or early 80s, and they talk about contraction, like it's really groovy and far out, man, So they taught that's how the language that they use. And but they started this project where essentially they have this great data, right? Because like they can show that kind of what would be a baseline, some baseline data for like a normal, for lack of another word, a normal rate of cesarean birth. And, because they are using interventions that are passed down from generation to generation, that they did their own work with the OBGYN that they referenced in her TED Talk, but they talked to midwives from other countries and learned all that they could about the grassroots baby delivery. So they have their rates are, I think, amazing, because it's something that we could look at and say this is possible. It's possible if we took a similar approach. But because of so many reasons, which if you want to dig into it more, you could watch The Business of Being Born. Have you guys ever seen that movie?
No.
So that's it's not one that I recommend so much, because it's a little bit like Hollywood and sensationalized, but there's some really good reasons as to why we've moved more towards a medicalization of birth in this country. And then did anybody watch the video that I gave you the link to, Reducing Infant Mortality? It's okay if you didn't.
Oh no, I didn't.
I
don't think I saw that link.
Well, it's okay. I posted it in the community forum, like that. And so, because it's not assigned, but Dr. Montanaro talks, I can't remember. It's not in chapter 1, but she'll write about some different interventions that used to be used that just aren't relevant anymore. And, but the reducing infant mortality is more current. And there's some really great, ways, it highlights how the mother-child bonding is still interrupted, but it's just interrupted in different ways. And so I think that it's relevant in that way, because Dr. Montanaro will write about, I think if you've already done the reading for this week, then you read it, but she writes about how we oh, you know, they used to feed the babies on the schedule, and, you know, it's time to feed your baby. And they used to, you know, take the baby away and then bring them back in only when they need to feed. But it's just not how we typically approach birth anymore. So those interventions are outdated, but there's still plenty of ways that we get.
My mom actually tried to convince me that having the nursery take my children unless they were hungry was like the best thing I could do. She's like, oh, you're going to need to sleep. I was like, what planet are you from? No, they're not taking my baby away. That's crazy. I was like, what?
I know. Well, I think sometimes parents can be a little bit like, you know, if you do it differently, that means that they did it wrong. And that can be a hard place for a parent to be in. I mean, I don't know.
My mom tells me all the time now, I learned so much from you. If I could have known even half of what you knew, I could have been so much better of a parent. And I was like, well, I don't win them all, but I try. So I'm glad you see it. But she told me this before I had my first. So she didn't really have any, you know, information on what it was like for me to base anything on. So, but she's gotten better.
It's all case by case, I think. Looking at the videos, what were they called? I think it was 2 where the mom and the siblings were there.
Oh, the birth videos, yes,
Videos, and especially the baby that was born and they were bathing the baby in the water, and the baby was so calm. When you think about that, and the other births where the baby come out screaming and howling, but the baby was so calm, and I was just all mesmerized with that one where.
Wait till you see one of the videos from this week.
Yeah. Oh, the baby bath.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was so sweet. You're so happy.
Yeah. He was so happy, and then moving around and moving his head on it. I was like, oh my God.
I couldn't believe she caught her own baby, right?
Yeah.
The way she was beautiful. I was like, I don't remember looking like that after.
Well, that was like her 3rd or 4th kid. She had a bunch of kids in there. Yeah. No.
Like, get out of
And
here.
she was like 20,
Right?
right?
Like that after birth.
The woman who owned the birth center where my son was born showed us a video of her giving birth to like her 4th child, I think, and she was totally like that, not a peep, like, you know, totally like she looked like beautiful, not, you know, and I'm like, you know, that, you know, I don't know if you know this, but you poop when you give birth. Like, no one told me that. I was like, what is she doing? Like the midwife, the assistants, like got this like little sieve or little, and I'm like, what is she doing? And then I was like, oh, I'm pooping. That's horrifying. That like that is, I had to like really like be like, I can't think about that. That's something that I need in my
Like,
consciousness right now. No, I'm gonna be like,
no, that poor baby coming out.
it's not beautiful. Yeah.
That one it just took her 20 minutes.
I know.
For the baby. She came in 20 minutes when the baby came. I was like, 14 hours, me and my child.
Yeah.
20 minutes, and she was just, the baby was born. I'm like,
Who knew
You needed to be on your hands and
tub.
knees.
Yeah.
I
Dang.
did.
No, well, I think that you know, one of the things that I wanted to mention that Ina May talks about in her movie, but she didn't mention it in her TED Talk, and I honestly thought that it was the most important thing that anybody could know about birth. And actually, it made me think of something else too. I felt like I had like several revelations. Is she said that sphincters are shy, and that when you're giving birth, your birth is dependent on how on your cervix dilating, and that's a sphincter. And sphincters don't perform well under pressure. And when you have lights, and when you have a doctor or a nurse that's coming in and checking on your progress, and you're failing to progress, and there's like people you don't know, and there's machinery hooked up to you, that can make your sphincter shy, and then it will not dilate, you know. So I think that was I know you just needed your sphincter needed a little privacy. But you know what I thought about when I heard her say that, though? I thought about poop, and I thought about how children some children will not poop in the toilet at school. They just they won't do it. It takes them a long time, or they figure out how to just get on the schedule of pooping at home. And I really think that those kids it's a sphincter shyness issue, that they just need that privacy and need to be alone. And unfortunately, I'm required to keep children within my sight and sound at all times, or I get in trouble. And so how do you balance that need for supervision with the sphincter's need for privacy? So, but I always thought that was such a, like when she said that in the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, of course. All right. What else?
Mercedes, do you have an infant classroom at your school?
I do.
So I just found out on Friday that my director is potentially looking into opening an infant classroom next year.
Okay.
But she's pretty clueless about what toddlers need, and I think she really doesn't know what infants need. But I think this is my opportunity to kind of explain sort of what that looks like. But obviously I'm learning a lot about that. But I didn't know if anybody else in the chat has an infant classroom. I think everybody else is toddler, right? Wendy, what are you?
Yeah, I'm toddler. We don't have an infant room.
Yeah. So Mercedes, you and I can talk sometime.
Yeah. Chris, were you going to say something? Your box highlighted there for a second.
Oh, no, I don't have an infant room either. We just have a toddler. You have to be 2 to get in. But
2.
I would love to change it.
Yeah.
I would love to change it to 16 months.
16 months. Yeah.
Maybe even lower. But down the road.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, I mean, probably there's logistical reasons why you can't have children under 2 that have to do with ratios and whatnot. But I hope that you are able to evolve your program to incorporate children under 2, because that's really like the closer we get to that, the more consistent we are with a Montessori model. Having that, at least 15 months, 16 months of age range is pretty, well, I guess even more than that, because our infant room starts at 3 months. And then they're about 15 months is kind of my lowest threshold for moving a child into the toddler community. And they really have to be walking well. I want to see them pretty close to 1 nap a day, because in toddler we only take 1 nap a day. I want to see them eating really well, able to sit at the table and eat with the group. I want them kind of on a similar schedule. I know that there's a little bit of work that we're going to have to do once they come in, but I actually just spent a lot of time in the infant room today to put somebody to sleep. Very proud of myself.
Ours will change once we find room. We're actually looking at, like last year we looked at a house across the street to put the early learners, so it would be like 18 months to 3. But it just fell through. So they're looking at spaces. We do have a house that's next door to us that the director's son lives in it. She's like, I just want to kick him out. So we will change it. But I think it's just going to take a little bit of time to figure out the spacing and get the money together to get all the things that we need. So.
Is your program in a home?
We have 3 different buildings.
Okay.
It's kind of funny. We are like in a little cul-de-sac. And so the first building started out as a house, and then they bought it and took it this was a long time ago. They built the middle building actually for a school, and so it's got a classroom down below, and it has the office and the library and the staff room upstairs. And then the building, the first building was a house, and it's all remodeled to a classroom. And then upstairs is like the multi-purpose room. So we have meetings up there with parents, and we have music practice up there. And then the building that I'm in actually has 2 classrooms divided by a kitchen and a entry or a coat room. And then upstairs is our kitchen, and then some storage stuff up there. And then it's like, we call it Cafe Woodland. So when we have our sweetheart tea for our parents in February, we invite their parents, and the kids serve them tea and cookies. We do it up there.
Cool.
So,
well, you got plenty of
so it's kind of like a little campus. It's really cool.
I know. It seems like you just kick somebody out of one of the community areas, and there's your infant room.
Yeah, well, and then they're worried about, we were going to actually do that this year, but our director was like, I really want the infants to be downstairs so you don't have to walk upstairs to get them, and then they can go out to their playground by themselves. They don't have to be, don't have to worry about the stairs. And it just, there's a lot of things that just kind of got in our way this year.
Yeah.
So,
well, it is a big step. I will say that we are our ratio is 3-to-1 in the infant room. And I don't think that I would ever, I don't know what your guys' ratios are in your states, but the state ratio for infants and toddlers in the state of Oregon is 4-to-1. And I don't think that I could ask I don't think that I could ask 2 adults to be with 8 infants. I like knowing how challenging it can be at times. It's just, so they have 3 teachers and 9 infants. And that works. We have an exception for our group size because the state of Oregon doesn't want a group larger than 8. It's a very, you have to have the right person as the lead in that classroom, because infants are a special. Does anyone have an interest in working with it? Do you have an interest in working with infants, Leslie? Or does anyone?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kathy, you do?
But there's no infant program here in Michigan at all. It's all toddlers 18 to 36 months. Or 2 to 6. So, there's absolutely no infants anywhere here.
Well, there's your, there's where the need is. I'm a big proponent of, just starting your own program in your home. So that I really am. That's how I started, my program. And I think that, that even with the Montessori credential, we're limited in terms of our pay scale. And there's definitely like a cap that's lower than it is in public education, for example. So I always encourage anyone that's in I always encourage trainees to really, or adult learners to really look at the possibility of, it's a huge undertaking, but that's where you maximize your potential in terms of income potential if you have your own program, if you have a program in your home, it's a way to, to kind of make as much money, to make the living that you deserve to make. Because there's not a lot of money in this field. Nobody gets into it for the money. So anyway, that's my little,
yeah. And I'm realizing, I've noticed that, we have a little bit of a sort of dichotomy at our school where the primary teachers they're very nice people, but they seem to look down on the toddler's house, and they seem to think of it more as daycare, even though it's within the same school. And I'm realizing that in the NIDO environment, there will probably be even more stigma with that, and more confusion about how you can enrich an infant's life, and sort of how there's, why is that important? And so it occurs to me that all this language about cells and things, if I'm going to be representing the Nido
Right.
classroom, I have to be educated and sound credible, to give it the importance that it needs, right?
Definitely. And I would argue that it's like it's, I was having this conversation with with my program director, and she went back to Idaho and was talking to her family about, baby school, and one of her relatives said something like, what can you teach a baby? And she's like, you know what? I'm going to let you just think about that. Let's just think about that for a couple minutes, because what do you teach a baby, really? They where do I
Their
start?
brains triple in size.
So it's the most critical age.
Yeah.
It requires the most prepared adult, and the toddlers as well. It's so interesting that I think that maybe the primary guides have a lot of technical knowledge about their materials, and I think that there's this false impression that the important work is the work that we do with the materials. Mm-hmm. And that is like, and Montessori herself, even she developed her materials to auto-educate the child. So, the materials speak for themselves. The children educate themselves by interacting with the materials. They don't need us, really. They shouldn't need us too much to orient them to the materials. And in the infant and toddler classroom, every single thing that we do is a presentation. And the most important presentations are the ones that happen in the bathroom and at the lunch table, and when you are negotiating some kind of ownership battle, and when you are outside playing. Those are the things where, and I would also argue that that's true in the primary as well. So I don't know if that's where that people get this false idea that the preschool is so much better than baby school, because it's I can't disagree more. But
I know, I'm surprised that there's not more common ground. There should be more in common, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed this about Montessorians really can be a little judgy, and there's like a lot of weird, like, I see, here's somebody laughing. Really? I know.
Yeah.
I know, this may be a surprise to you.
We are not practicing what we preach. Yeah.
Right? And how do we get to peace? How do we expect that for the child when we are not ourselves practicing that? And it is so interesting to me that there tends to be so much judgment in this field, and so much division and exclusion. And I will say that is why I love CGMS and the International Montessori Council, because they just are not like that. They welcome everyone, and they talk about, we talk about Montessori values. These are our values, and in what way is our approach consistent with our values? And let's talk about that. And then let's find, if our approach is inconsistent with our values, then let's evolve that practice, and let's help people to understand where those inconsistencies are, and bring everybody up, instead of being like, that's just not Montessori. I will say I hate that more than anything else.
A good way to sort of work on that barrier with the primary teachers is when you have conversations about children who have moved up, asking them, how are they adjusting? Did they adjust quickly? How are their interactions with peers? How are they, because all of those things are because of what we have done, or you have done in your toddler environment. Because if they came right from home, unless they have amazing Montessori parents, chances are, and even Maria Montessori writes in The Absorbent Mind how the child of 3 comes in and he's just like crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, they're so unorganized and so angry that someone would be saying, this is how you need to do, to give instruction. And when they can have that sooner, and they can normalize before they move up to a primary environment, and then they can sort of skip that whole really messy part. That's because of what we've done.
Exactly. That's a great point, Laura, that and I know that the teachers in my school fully recognize how much better prepared the toddlers who move from our program into primary, rather than from, I think I've told you, we call them from off the street. From off the street. So I'm pausing.
But I think it's the background noise maybe is making it.
Do you see it too? Do you see, yes. Chris, your box lights up, and so I just wanted to make sure that I was giving you a chance to chime in.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I could chime in, but I didn't really mean to say anything. I think it's amazing too. I have great staff members or teachers that love that my kids are adjusted and normalized when they get into the classroom. They already know the routine of like the lunch routine, and they already know the routine for before or after care and going outside, and they already know the rules of different things in our school. So I passed on some children, a couple boys that are really busy and are more active, and the 3 to 6 year old teacher just said to me the other day, she's like, I don't know what you did the year before, because I had mostly boys, and I had like 3 of her students that were boys, and then 2 of her girls that I passed on. And she was like, I don't know what you did in your classroom. That was a crazy year. I'm like, yeah, it was. Thanks for noticing. But she can recognize she can be thankful that he already knows the lunch routine, and he already knows how to get a rug out, and he already knows, like, she didn't have to, like you said, come off the street. If he last year was crazy, and I was just thankful that he could get a rug and put a cereal on it. So a lot of times in my classroom, that's kind of what I focus on, is the potty toilet learning, right, and then the routines. Yep. And not to say that we don't teach them anything or they don't learn anything, because they do, but that's not really my focus, is to teach them their sounds and their numbers and their, like it is in the 3 to 6 year old class. Mm-hmm. Because I want them to have, the classroom developmentally appropriate for them, where they can knock down the blocks and it's okay, but let's keep them on the rug. That way, when they have the material in the 3 to 6 year old classroom, they know that they should keep the material on the rug. So I'm really grateful that the teachers that I work with, or the 3 to 6 year old teachers that I work with, really are appreciative of me. Because I'm the only early learner teacher. I mean, I have an assistant, but I'm the only early learner class. And then our elementary principal used to be a teacher, and she just got the principal's job this year, but her children are in the the 3 to 6 year old class this year, and I had her youngest daughter in early learners, and she's always praising us and saying, like, if it wasn't for them, there's no way I could teach these kids so much. Like, this is a really important part if you want them to go all the way, that they can learn from being in early learners and then going to 3 to 6 year old class and then coming to the elementary. Mm-hmm. So we have a pretty amazing support staff, all the way through the elementary school, because we have 2 teachers in our elementary school that started out in a 3 to 6 year old class, mm-hmm, and then went back and got their degree, and their kids went through the primary campus too. So I'm pretty lucky. Yeah. But I definitely recognize that those kids progress a lot faster and a lot easier
Coming from
when they start in the early learners. Yeah.
For sure. I know it sounds like the primary teachers need to do a little more observation in your class, Leslie.
Yeah.
I know. Let's see. 6:21. Okay. So we're down to the last 9 or 10 minutes. What is burning on your mind? Kathy, I heard you got your practicum placement.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. I got my packet in, so I'm just waiting to make sure from Tracy and Elaine that it's approved.
Great. No, so are you feeling excited about the classroom? What's the age range and
Yeah, I am. I visited like 3 times and
uh-huh.
kids already, they're fabulous. So I'm really excited.
Great.
The folks are really nice. The teachers and the directors and everybody's really nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's so crucial that for me anyway, to have a community of teachers, staff that really are there for one another. We have a motto at my school. Have I told you? Teamwork makes the dream work. So we really believe that, and that's part of our school culture. And it's just there's just life's too short, right? we gotta have nice people in our lives.
Well, and if you don't sort of have each other's back, I mean, things get twisted when talking to parents. And I am so thankful for my supportive director and even our office manager and the primary teacher who I'm sending 2 children up to in January. But with one of the children's parents, I've had a really hard time. They, refer to all the kids except theirs as a baby, and all the babies, she says the babies are always crying all the time, and she's so stressed out, and I don't know, it's kind of, I'm like ignoring them at this point because I have just a few more weeks left before they're gone. But I can count on when they talk to the primary teacher that she's going to support the work that I've done and the things that I've said, and and my director as well, and we're all on the same page, and that just makes your life so much better. Your work life,
yes,
better. And then the parents can't, go back and say, oh, well, so-and-so said that, this wasn't important and you didn't do this right, and so now I can be mad at you for that. But it gets
I don't think we need reasons to be mad.
Our school is very, very small and gets very, very cliquey with parents and play dates and birthday part. I just avoid. I'm like my child. She's 5. Poor Ava. Hardly gets to go to any birthday parties except for the kids whose parents I really get along with. I'm like, I think we're busy. Sorry. Because I just
can't. Be tricky.
Crossing that parent-teacher boundary is tricky.
It is. I know it can be tricky. Well, and I don't have great advice. I mean, I think that it's, so the NACE, the National Association for Education of Young Children, has this really great document called the Code of Ethics. And I haven't seen a really robust code of ethics. Like AMS has one. The IMC might have one. I'll have to look. I imagine that they do, but the NACE Code of Ethics is really a beautiful document, and I'll follow up. I'll post it for you guys if you want to look at it, because it can help to guide. What do you do? And especially because if you learn about something with your parent hat on, that might affect the way that you see that parent as a teacher, that can be really kind of tricky, I think. So I'll follow up. It's, even just for your information, it's a fun document to look at. And then in their magazine, Young Children, they have these discussions. I actually participated in one time where they pose an ethical dilemma, and then people kind of weigh in about, and there's not really a right or wrong, right? It's just like, how do you use like these ethics to support or refute a statement, you know, and how can we use it to guide the way that we behave in the context of this whole school culture? Like, how do we treat families? How do we treat children? How do we treat our coworkers? And how do we treat the organization that we work for? I think that those are all really important considerations. And I think too, just this week, one of the prompts was about judgment, right? It was about the judgment-free birth, you know, that we can't be judgmental, right, about the way that a woman chooses to give birth. What I think is difficult is how do we advocate for children and mothers, you know, in a societal context that just it doesn't support that. Like our whole, you know, like I feel like, you know, the videos that you'll watch this week and like Ina May Gaskin, I don't know that the responsibility to be free of birth can fall solely to one woman, you know, because we are a product of our culture, and there's just not a lot of support for a fearless birth, you know, and to have that expectation, oh, you know, if you would just release your fear, then that baby would come out. Like I don't think that that's a productive way to look at it. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important to kind of reconcile, how do we, you know, I think that a lot of women would say, well, if I had you know, you do the best that you can with what you have at the time that you have it. I think Maya Angelou said that. And we just have to, like, I think it's interesting to hear a child's birth story, and it might give us some information about who they are as a person, but being able to hear that story and integrate it without judgment, I think it can sometimes take some practice. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah, I wrote in my response to that prompt how I mean, when you consider how drastically different everybody's life is,
right,
in experiences, and the way you perceive information, and, you know, you might take away a totally different meaning for something you learned about giving birth than the person sitting next to you in the class you took.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, our end goal is just healthy babies and healthy moms. And if they reached that in a different way than you know, that's how they got there doesn't really matter. It's just that they got there. Well, I mean, it does, but it doesn't.
Well, I don't know. It might matter. I mean, it might matter to you. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't want to argue. I don't disagree necessarily, but I think that the end justifies the means is a tricky place to be in. You know, because I'm sure, like, I had a unmedicated vaginal birth, and I'd have very, you know, like it went really well, smoothly. It happened really quickly, but I don't know that, like, if it had not gone, you know, if I had to be transported, if I had to have a cesarean birth, like, I would want permission to feel whatever emotion I feel about that, you know. And I think that the idea that, like, the end, you know, it's just about having a healthy baby. Yes, it absolutely is. But also, can it also be about, you know, like, feeling it's okay. It's okay to feel like terrible about the way that, you know, the way that your birth went, if it didn't align with your vision or.
Well, definitely. I just mean in a sense that we shouldn't, if it's not ours that we experienced, we shouldn't be saying to someone else, well, you didn't do it right. Well, you should have done this. You know, letting them, like you just said, letting them feel what they feel about it, and that's how they feel about it. That's their experience, and it's not for us to say that you did it wrong or you should have done this because this was better. You know,
no, and it's such a personal
supporting them
thing.
in whatever they're feeling and whatever their process was is what's important.
Yeah. Sorry, Laura.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I talked about how it's such a personal thing to talk about your birth story, you know, as your maternal birth story, and how we had talked about that in residential, and how that we kind of did that early on, didn't we, Kathy and Wendy? And I remember feeling
early.
What'd you say?
I said, yeah, that was pretty early. It was like maybe Tuesday.
Yeah, I remember feeling like I don't think I haven't earned this this opportunity to hear these people's personal stories, but I definitely felt more connected afterwards. Like we all had different experiences and had so many different emotions, but it was very warm, and everybody was very receptive and non-judgmental. Thank goodness.
Well, yeah. What are you gonna do?
I'm sad I didn't get to go to residential because I would love it if a perfect stranger told me their birth story because I find it fascinating.
It was.
And I read the entire Mayo Clinic textbook on pregnancy when I was pregnant with my first child. It's huge. I read it cover to cover because I was like fascinated about it. So when people tell me their stories or they want to hear mine, I'm like, oh, let me tell you. Didn't all go according to plan, but it's pretty cool just the same. But
cool. Awesome. All right. Well, we're here. It's 6:32. This is our last chat of the year. So I know. Wow. Yeah, we have 3 down weeks. So I'll post something about that. 3 weeks. It seems like a funny time to take a break, like right when we're starting to really dig into the meat and potatoes of birth. But right, I love it. But we'll come back after the first of the year, and I wish you guys all joy and ease and relief, and everything good.
Happy holidays, everybody.
All right. Good night, everybody.
You
Good
too.
night.
Good night.
Bye.
Hi, Mercedes. Good night.
Good night.